The 2011 NBA draft featured 7 future NBA All-Stars within its ranks, yet only 2 of those were selected in the top 10 spots. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the second part of my draft series where I am revisiting the NBA drafts over the years and looking into how each pick turned out in the NBA from bust to boom. We are going to be looking at all of the top 10 picks in each draft and seeing where they are at today. If you do enjoy this type of content though, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, as I am trying to reach 300 subscribers by the end of August. It helps me out so much when you guys do that. Thank you for joining me on this journey, as I will continue to post these videos across the next few weeks until I get tired of them or we have done every draft in NBA history. Thank you guys for joining me on the second one, and let's go ahead and get right into the draft.
Kyrie Irving from Duke University.
Stepping up to the podium with the first overall pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers, still reeling from the departure of superstar LeBron James in the previous offseason, selected his hopeful successor in Duke point guard Kyrie Irving. While very few scouts viewed Irving as the highest potential player coming into the draft, it was almost universally agreed that he would become at minimum an all-star and at least a relatively productive NBA player. And while he has had his fair share of interesting moments in the NBA, Irving has definitely been the best player out of this draft. While Irving only played 1 year at Duke, he averaged about 18 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, and 4 assists on an efficient 52% from the field and 46% from 3. Because of these numbers, obviously he was taken first overall by the Cavs, and the rest is history. He has really not had a bad season throughout his career, and while his first few seasons he featured extremely bad overall records as a part of a bad Cleveland team, Irving has been one of the better point guards in the NBA for the better part of a decade, and he even helped LeBron win the 2016 championship against the Warriors, which we all remember due to the legendary 3-1 comeback and his infamous shot around the corner above Steph Curry. There isn't much to say about this selection, as he is unarguably the best player in this draft, and while he has received scrutiny due to his interesting viewpoints on the world and life, Irving is still a talented and sought-after point guard, spending time in Cleveland, Boston, Brooklyn, and now likely wherever he gets traded this offseason. He has been loved and hated throughout his career, yet he still can be argued as the best player in this draft and the unanimous #1 overall pick in most redrafts.
With the second pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Derrick Williams from the University of Arizona.
Unfortunately, not every pick in 2011 ended as well as the first one did for Cleveland. Coming into the draft, though, Derrick Williams was widely viewed as the most NBA-ready and best all-around player in the draft. His 2 seasons at Arizona only backed this up. Williams finished his career with 18 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 1 assist per game, while shooting an extremely efficient 58% from the field and 51% from 3. On top of this, Williams was at least an above-average defender in both seasons, another attribute that helped his stock continue to rise. However, though, the positives ends there, as Williams would never reach his potential in the NBA and would spend 9 seasons playing for 6 different teams and about 428 games total, but he never really reached more than a role player or a bench player on bad teams. His most productive time was his first 3 seasons, surprisingly, in Minnesota, where he averaged 10 points per game and 5 rebounds per game before being traded in 2013 to the Sacramento Kings, where his relative decline would truly begin. After 2 disappointing seasons in Sacramento, Williams spent the next 4 on flyer contracts, hoping to land on a productive role on a contending team, but that never came, and by 2018 he was overseas playing in Germany. That is where he has been to this day, and with career averages of 9 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and 0.7 assists per game, Williams is a low profile and often not talked about bust from the 2011 draft.
With the third pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz select Ennis Cantor from Istanbul, Turkey, and the University of Kentucky.
Coming in at the 3rd selection and the beginning of a streak of big men, Enes Cantor was viewed as the best center prospect in the entire draft coming out of Turkey, and the Jazz selected him hoping to solidify their position for years to come. In the 2009 FIBA tournament for under 18 players, Cantor averaged an outstanding 18 points per game and 16 rebounds per game and would ultimately win the tournament MVP trophy. While he had very little mobility or range, Cantor was seen as at least a dominant force in the paint, using his size and post skills to get blocks and rebounds, all while showing off an impressive post-offensive game. Cantor's first 2 seasons were relatively disappointing, yet by his 4th year, he averaged 13 points per game and 8 rebounds per game in 49 games for Utah, before being traded to OKC, where he would average a career-high 18 points per game and 11 points per game through the final 26 games of the season. Cantor seemed poised for greatness these next few seasons, yet he never really reached that level of play again in his career. From 2016 to 2021, Cantor only averaged 12 points per game, 8.7 rebounds per game, and 1 assist per game, which are impressive numbers, but still a major drop from where he looked to be in the 2014-15 season with the Thunder. Totaling 748 games for 5 different teams, Cantor has been a relatively successful low-tier starting center and an extremely reliable backup center. And while the 3rd overall pick may be a little high for him, Cantor, who has since changed his name to Freedom, or his last name to Ennis Freedom, over a dispute with the Turkish government, has consistently found a role on NBA rosters and will continue to until he retires. So far, though, for his career, Ennis Freedom has averaged 11 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 1 assist per game, which matches his career so far. Not outstanding, but still quality numbers.
The 4th pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Tristan Thompson from Toronto, Canada, and the University of Texas.
After taking Kyrie Irving #1 overall, the Cavaliers held the 4th spot in the draft, where they would decide to shore up their center position by taking Texas center Tristan Thompson. In 1 season at Texas, Thompson averaged 13 points per game and 8 rebounds per game, which aren't surprisingly shocking numbers of someone that was drafted 4th overall. Most outlets actually mocked Thompson to be taken in the late top 10 from 9 to 12 range in comparison. While these mocks are closer to how his career has went as an NBA player, Thompson did play 9 serviceable seasons in Cleveland, including 1 in 2016, where he was able to win a championship as a part of the Cavaliers. In total, though, his time in Cleveland, he only averaged 9 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, and about 1 block per game on 28 minutes a night. However, after leaving Cleveland, Thompson's career has been on a downward spiral. Despite getting 2 fairly large contracts and playing on 4 teams in 2.5 seasons, he's only averaged 7 points per game and 6.5 rebounds per game. And in a similar way to Ennis Freedom, he basically reached his peak early in his career, and since then Thompson has just been a serviceable NBA center, but never reached the expected heights of someone taken 4th overall.
With the 5th pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select Jonas Valanciunas from Utina, Lithuania.
The 3rd center in the top 5 picks, Jonas Valanciunas from Lithuania. His career seemed on track with the other selections above him until recently. Very little is known about his production before the draft. However, it is known that he did post 39 points and 19 rebounds in his 1 game at the under-18 Euro tournament, and in turn, the Raptors selected him, where he would play for his first 8 seasons. Jonas only averaged about 12 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, and 1 block per game, being a reliable starting NBA center, somebody that's not going to wow you, but has at least been a consistent player on your team. Coming into 2020, it was pretty much expected unanimously that Valanciunas would continue this role as a low-tier starting center, but he exploded in his 3rd season on the Grizzlies, averaging 17 points per game and 12.5 rebounds per game, solidifying himself as a higher tier starting center. Last season in 2021, it was more of the same from Valanciunas, and while he may be turning 30 soon, it seems like Jonas is finally coming into the prime of his career, which is a positive for the Pelicans, who traded him for him with Steven Adams last year. Overall, Jonas never turned it up in Toronto over 7 seasons, but he has slowly become a higher tier center in the NBA, and honestly, he shows no signs of stopping, making his selection compared to the other people a quality pick at the 5th spot in retrospect.
With the 6th pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select Jan Vesely from Ostrava, Czech Republic. He last played for Partizan Belgrade.
With the 6th overall selection, in a similar way to center Jonas Valanciunas before him, Czech Republic native power forward center Jan Vesely came into the draft with very little known about him as a prospect, but his 6'11", 230 stature made him a promising enough prospect that the Wizards took him 6th overall in their rebuild just 1 year after selecting John Wall 1st overall. The experiment, however, was extremely short-lived and really did not get off of its training wheel stage. As for his career, Vesely only averaged 3.6 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, and about 0.6 assists per game. He would spend 2.5 seasons in Washington and half a year in Denver before falling out of the NBA in 2013. A career of only 3 total years and no quality NBA minutes for a top 6 pick is extremely puzzling, yet Vesely never received more than 18 points per game, and that was only 1 season, where the rest of his career he would hover around 12 to 14 minutes per game. He would total about 162 games played across those basically 2 seasons with Washington and 1 with Denver, but he is incomparably the biggest bust out of this draft, and from my last video and this one so far, he had the quickest career of them all. Since 2013, however, Vesely has returned back to Europe, where he's played since and even won the EuroLeague MVP in 2019 and has had a fairly successful career. So while he flopped almost instantly in the NBA, Vesely has still had a solid career and is likely going to go down as one of the better players in EuroLeague history.
With the 7th pick in the 2011 NBA Draft, the Sacramento Kings select Bismack Biyombo from Lubumbashi of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Unsurprisingly, the streak of big men continued at the 8th spot as one of the first small ball centers we see in these drafts. The Sacramento Kings selected Congo native Bismack Biyombo at just 18 years old. Not even an hour after being selected, though, Biyombo was included as a part of a 3-team trade, which will later be mentioned for another selection in this top 10, which would send him to the Charlotte Bobcats, where he would become a quality NBA center, but Biyombo never quite reached his potential that was seen when he was drafted. His first 4 seasons in Charlotte featured very little surprises, averaging only 4.4 points per game and 6 rebounds per game. In the 2014 offseason, Biyombo did sign a small deal with the Raptors to serve as a backup center, and he would do that at an extremely high level. He is most known, though, for his playoff success with the Raptors, where he rose to an occasion of averaging 6 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, and 1.5 blocks per game, creating key defensive plays, pushing Toronto into the Eastern Conference Finals. This success gave Biyombo the chance to sign a 4-year deal with the Orlando Magic, totaling up to $68 million in total value. Obviously, he never lived up to this contract, and he only played 2 seasons for the Magic before being traded back to Charlotte, where he would play 3 more seasons. In January of 2020, after being out of the NBA for a little bit, Biyombo did sign a 10-day contract, which he would then turn into a 1-year deal, hoping to revitalize his career with the Phoenix Suns. And in the end, Biyombo did have glimpses of excitement throughout his career, but he never reached a role any higher than a role player center. Bust may not fit a center who has played 738 games in the NBA, yet Biyombo definitely did not deserve to be taken 7th overall.
With the 8th pick in the 2011 NBA Draft, the Detroit Pistons select Brandon Knight from the University of Kentucky.
Finally snapping the drought or the streak of centers, numerous scouts viewed Brandon Knight, the guard from Kentucky, as the top guard prospect in the draft from his prolific offensive skill. And while he did lack a defensive talent that could be taught in his career, is what was believed by NBA scouts. Knight averaged 17 points per game and 4.5 assists per game during his time at Kentucky, which included a dramatic Final Four run and the elimination of the #1 seeded Ohio State Buckeyes. This allowed Knight to showcase his offensive talent as the #1 option in a John Calipari run offense. As per the course, Knight has since struggled with injuries throughout his career and never became the offensive weapon he was expected to be, despite a very successful start. His first 2 seasons in Detroit, he averaged 13 points per game and 4 assists per game, and once he moved to Milwaukee via trade in 2013, he jumped up to 18 points per game and 5 assists per game, becoming the starting point guard in their offense. His time in Milwaukee, much like Detroit, did end up being extremely short as he was shipped to Phoenix in the Eric Bledsoe trade in 2014. However, he would have a career year in 2015, averaging 20 points per game, 5 assists per game, and 1.2 steals per game on the defensive side. Knight, however, unfortunately never reached this height again, losing his starting role next season and falling all the way down to 11 points per game. Since then, he has spent time injured, missing entire seasons, and jumping from team to team, hoping to find a role he fits, but never quite sticking as he should. Still, just as a pure offensive player, Knight has a place in the NBA, and with the departure of Jalen Brunson, it's possible that Knight will get more playing time in Dallas, allowing him to return to his role as an efficient offensive player. Once again, I would not personally label him a bust, as 14 points per game for his entire career is extremely respectable, but Knight has never been found or given the perfect opportunity, and is likely at best a role player from here on out at the age of 31.
With the 9th pick in the 2011 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Bobcats select Kemba Walker from the...
Coming into our last two spots, we have one of the most electrifying and memorable college players at UConn. Kemba Walker came into the draft projected as a top 5 pick. However, his stock fell due to height concerns, and this allowed the Bobcats to select him 9th overall, where he would go on to spend 8 seasons in Charlotte, 3 with the Bobcats, and his last 5 when the team rebanded to the Hornets. He made 3 All-Star teams in his last 4 seasons as a Hornet from 2016 to 2018 for the Hornets, averaging 19 points per game and 5.5 assists per game and 1 steal per game during his time in Charlotte. The city loved him, and he embraced the city and team as the star player for the Hornets. Obviously, though, being in Charlotte, Walker never experienced much playoff success other than an intense 7-game series against Miami in 2016, which they would lose at the end of the day. Since leaving Charlotte, Walker has fallen off to some degree, and after an all-star season with Boston in 2019, the Celtics traded Walker, hoping to receive a player to help them chase their championship hopes, and in turn, after one season in New York, Walker is likely going to be bought out from Detroit after a draft day trade, and may find a role on a contending team looking to win a championship. Undoubtedly the second best player in the top 10, Walker has had an extremely successful NBA career despite very little playoff success, and while the last 2 seasons have been tough on him, he still has time to make an impact and return to his previous averages. And for his career, he has averaged an impressive 19 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game.
With the 10th pick in the 2011 NBA Draft, the Milwaukee Bucks select Jimmer Fredette from Brigham Young University.
The final player in the top 10 is one of the most exciting and exhilarating prospects we have seen coming into the draft. The hype around Jimmer Fredette, BYU point guard, was crazy. He was known as the best three-point shooter in the draft, showcasing extreme range and consistent handle of his shot. Captaining his team in college, Fredette only averaged about 18 points per game, 2 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game across his 4 seasons, but most notably, he reached 28 points per game in his senior year and 31 points per game in the college tournament. Because of this, Fredette received extreme hype coming into the draft, and while most reports still put him outside of the lottery, the Bucks stooped down and selected him 10th overall, shipping him quickly to Sacramento in the same trade that sent the aforementioned Bismack Biyombo to Charlotte. While Fredette's shooting did translate relatively well into the NBA, he never averaged more than 7.6 points per game across 6 seasons, and coincidentally, he never saw more than 18 points per game after his rookie season, which was 18.6 minutes per game. Fredette's hype was quickly rooted up as a hollow NCAA tournament hype, as he would receive chance after chance to succeed in the NBA, but could never quite put all the tools together. Fredette would see a 3-year gap of no contracts after 2015, and a 6-game split in 2018 with the Suns would not revitalize his career, leaving Fredette with very little hope of ever returning to the NBA again, despite having some G League offers. Other than being a college basketball legend and despite being a bust in the NBA, he has still had a successful NBA or basketball career overseas, most notably for the Shanghai Sharks of the Chinese Basketball Association. However, for his career in the NBA, he only averaged 6 points per game, 1 rebound per game, and 1 assist per game, being one of the most disappointing what-ifs in NBA history. And just like that, we have looked at possibly one of the more disappointing top 10s in NBA draft history, boasting only 2 All-Stars and a few high-profile busts, but the 2011 NBA draft still had a solid impact on the NBA as a whole. Outside of the top 10, it featured players such as Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, Isaiah Thomas, Nikola Vucevic, and Klay Thompson, multiple All-Stars and solid NBA players. These steals allow the draft to receive a much greater level of attention and success than without them, and in my opinion puts the draft up another tier without these type of players outside of the top 10. Unfortunately, we are not focusing on them today. Maybe in a future video we look at some of the better steals in each NBA draft. But as always, if you do enjoy this type of content, please hit the like button and subscribe. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, comment down below what you think the worst and best picks were in this top 10 in 2011, and how do you guys think this draft would have ended up if some of these guys ended up being quality NBA players. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.